Hello, dear friends. Pirkei Avot, chapter 2, Mishnah 7. Some people have it as Mishnah 8, um, but here it's Mishnah 7. Huaya Omer. This is the last saying of Hillel, which I mentioned before, which appear to be extra sayings of Hillel put in to make that connection between the family of Yudah Nasi and his son Rabban Gamliel and the student of Hillel, Yochanan ben Zakkai. He used to say, Marbe basar marbe rima. If a person, marbe means a lot of, but it's a little bit difficult to translate in that way. In Hebrew, it means a lot of body or a lot of flesh brings a lot of maggot, which really means if you just want to make yourself fat, it's just going to bring you more maggots and worms in the grave. The next one is marbe nechasim. If you have a multitude of wealth, it brings a multitude of worries. Now, there are going to be 5 things here, as pointed out by the Maharal. He's going to have 5 negative and 5 positive, according to what the Maharal understands here. The style here is a style that he's trying to basically use the word marbeh, and therefore I will retranslate everything. But what he's basically saying here, as you can see, he's talking about 5 things which everybody you might say wants in the material world, but Hillel's point is going to be that they are things that do not have absolute value. They only have value in this world, and at the end of the day, their value is not absolute. So, in other words, people like marbe basar marbe riba. People like to eat. Okay, you like to eat, so it makes your body large, and therefore there will just be more maggots in the grave after. By the way, in antiquity, people who were fat were considered more healthy. And that's why in the Bible, the word bari actually means somebody who is fat. And women who were fat were considered more attractive. This is just the way things were seen in antiquity. So marbe masar marbe rima. But so he's saying even if you eat a lot and you have a large body, it's just more maggots in the grave. So it's not something of absolute value. The next one, if you have a lot of wealth, if you have a lot of property, it's just a lot of worry. In other words, it's just something, okay, this is things that people seek in this world, but that's all it does is really create worry. Marbe nashim, also, people seek many wives, right, in a polygamous society. So people had many wives. It says marbek shafim. This brings more magic or black magic. There are 2 ways to understand this. One way to understand it, of course, is that and this is some like people like Rashi point out, in the Bible, the term for magician is always in the feminine. There was an association between women and magic in antiquity. We know this not only in biblical times, but in later times too. However, this could be also understood in a very simple way, as the Tosfot Yontif points out, that when you have many wives and they're competing with each other, because in Hebrew, a second wife is called a tzara, the one who's going to make problems, because that's what happens when you have women, more than one wife, there's enmity between them and competition, so they are going to compete with each other. They're going to try to use their magic, meaning their feminine magic, in order to compete with each other, not in the sense of black magic. And it's going to create a lot of strife. It's going to create a lot of arguments unnecessarily in the house. So in antiquity, what did people want in the time of Yudah Nasi, in the time of Hillel? People wanted lots of food. People wanted lots of property. If it was a man, they wanted lots of wives. And they also wanted female and male slaves. The male slaves would be working in the fields, and the female slaves would be helping in the house. So he says, if you have a lot of male slaves, marbe abadi, marbe gazel, they're going to steal from you in the end, because they're not going to like you. And you have female slaves, it'll just make a lot of licentiousness and liberality, marbe zima, because the males and the female slaves, they act the way society sees them. Again, he is not promoting anything here. He's telling you the problems in his society. In his society, these are the material ideals that people are striving for, and they're valueless. They just bring more problems than they do solve. And then after that, he brings what he considers 5 issues which do have absolute value. The first one is to show the antithesis. Marbe Torah, marbe chaim. If you have a lot of Torah, it brings you a lot of life. By the way, what does that mean? How does a lot of Torah bring a lot of life? Some people bring verses. I'm sure he does that here. When it says a lot of Torah, he brings a marbe limot Torah, because it says kibu yubu mayamecha v'yosifu lecha shnot chaim. It says in Proverbs, this will add years to your life. Now, first of all, the word marbe actually does mean a multiplicity in quantity. That's what we had before. If you have more property and more wives and more male and female slaves, so it is talking about quantity. So the question is, what is the quantity when you're saying marbe Torah? Unless you're talking about the more time you put into studying Torah, the more it will give you life. Okay, but then of course you have to understand this based on this verse, which is being brought, because it says in Mishle and Proverbs that Torah gives life. I had a little discussion on Shabbat about this Mishnah with at somebody's house that I was at, and people gave different views, and I think the other views are valid too. So it could be talking about adding to life in a sense of having a longer life. It could also be understood as a qualitative idea, which means adding meaning to your life qualitatively. So when you add meaning, like we say, et mispar yamecha amale, that every day should be full. So if it adds meaning to life, then the life itself is worth more. Because what's the point of having so many days if the days are meaningless one after another? So it could be also understood that way too, marbe Torah, marbe chayim, in the sense that the life you have becomes more meaningful. Marbe yeshiva, marbe chokhmah. Again, the longer that you sit and study, the more you will achieve wisdom. Marbe eitzah, the more a person tries to take advice from other people to understand things, marbe tfuna, the more they will have new ideas that will come out of this. Marbe tzedakah, the more a person does for others, charity and kindness. Marbe shalom, this brings peace, because when you're willing to work with other people, they're willing to work with you too. Kana shem tov, a person who acquired a good name, acquired something for themselves of value. Kana latzmo. These are the 5. The 5th one is a little bit different because the first 4 of the positive ones all use the term marbe, which means to spend time or to do more. Whereas kana shem tov, which literally means to create a good name, kana in the sense of create, koneh shamayim va'aretz, kana latzmo, you have created something of value for yourself. Now, and then it ends off, according to Maral, this last thing, the 11th thing, is just a summary, where he says, kanalo divrei Torah, if a person acquires for themselves the words of Torah, kanalo chayei olam haba, they acquired for themselves a place in the world to come. Now, Maral claims that this last thing is not an extra thing because we already mentioned Torah study before. Now, in my opinion, the structure is more or less like the Maral, but there's a little bit more to say about it. There are 5 negative things and 5 positive things, but we also have to notice that 2 of them are there as opposing, contrary, au contraire. The first one, after the 5 negative ones, when it says marbe Torah, marbe chaim, this is the au contraire, number 1, showing the contrary position. If all these 5 things of what people seek in the material world are things that have negative outcomes for a person, for Torah, it's a positive outcome because it actually adds to life or adds to the quality of life. The same thing is happening at the end when they mention Torah again. Even when they mention the five, let's say, positive things that a person can have in this world, one of them is studying Torah, the other one is spending time at wisdom, listening to what people have to say, giving charity, getting a good name for yourself in this world. But then again, au contraire, it says, but even though these things are qualitative in this world, the study of Torah also has a value in the world to come. Now, it doesn't mean that these things don't have any value from God's point of view. Of course it does. In that sense, yes, you can also be rewarded in the world to come. But the idea is, the Torah study was always seen as a little bit in a different light because it's not seen in the sense of the reward is in the world to come. It's almost as if connecting to the Torah has a value which is already building your spiritual life which will continue in the world to come. It's sort of like it transcends what you're doing with it in this world. You know, there's a mission that says in Peah that there are certain things Adam ochel perotem ba'olam hazeh v'keren kayem l'olam haba. There's certain things that a person uses in this world, meaning benefits from in this world, helping out somebody who's getting married, helping this, different acts that a person could do, charity, and it has also world in the world to come. But with Torah study, it says Keneged Kulam, it's greater than all of them, because Torah study, there's a certain, if we're going according to Chaim Volozhin, there's a certain devekut, clinging to the divine in this world, which is preparing you already for a different type of consciousness, which a person is going to have in the world to come. And therefore, it's already acquiring for you a place in the world to come by this act of clinging to God through the study of Torah by itself. So it was seen almost in a different category as the idea of keeping a command. That's why it's wrong to see Torah study as just fulfilling a command. That's not the point. As Chaim Volozhin writes in his Ruach Chaim, that studying Torah is more important than the knowledge acquired from the study. In other words, he understood the study of Torah as an act of almost what they call unio mystico. It's a sort of like clinging to God, of connecting to God's word. That's not what I want to go into now, but I'm just saying that in this Mishnah too, the idea of acquiring Torah has a certain qualitative edge over the other things that I mentioned. So again, the structure of this Mishnah. The first five things are things that in the time of Hillel, people are looking for material in this world, whether it's lots of good food to eat, whether it's a lot of treasures and property to own, whether it's many women, if we're talking about a man, and male and female slaves. That's what people wanted, and that's what the rich had in those days. And all of those things, he says, they have negative sides to them, which you can wonder whether they make it worth it. On the other hand, he says, the study of Torah brings a qualitative and maybe even quantitative edge to life. Spending time in wisdom, taking advice from people in order to help you think, giving charity and doing acts of kindness, and acquiring a good name, which is something which has a positive value in this world. So all these things are positive values in this world without the downside. But in the end, if you acquire Torah, you're also acquiring something which is already building a place for you in the world to come. So these are the things I want to say about Hillel's final statement here. And then from here, next week, it's going to proceed into the next part, which is also the beginning part, according to Avot Rabbi Natan, the student of Hillel, Yochanan ben Zakkai. And here it says he received from Hillel and Shammai. So you can actually see that it looks like it was supposed to be in chapter 1, following where the statements of Hillel and Shammai together. And as I said, there seemed to be filler Mishnahs in between. This was the last of the filler Mishnayot. Shalom, shalom.